Before we jump into this episode, I want to take a moment to tell you about the upcoming Texas Woodworking Festival, a 2-day celebration where makers and enthusiasts come together to share their passion for the craft. Join us for a weekend filled with creativity, community, and inspiration. You'll meet tool manufacturers, furniture makers, woodworking clubs, content creators, and more, all in one place with great food and drinks, and of course, all things woodworking. It all takes place in Austin, Texas on September 13th and 14th. The festival features an educational track on Saturday and Sunday, plus a special pre-conference content creator track on Friday, September 12th. There you'll have a chance to learn from masters of the craft like Gary Rogowski, Matt Kinney, Andy Rawls, and Kate Casey, just to name a few. Head to the TexasWoodworkingFestival.com for more details and to grab your tickets. Use the code MWA25 to get 10% off your tickets. I'll drop a link in the show notes. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, there's something for everyone at the Texas Woodworking Festival. Don't miss it. Welcome to the MWA podcast. I'm Kyle and I'm here with my co-hosts Sean and Brian. Today we're thrilled to have Chuck Bender join us. Chuck is a master furniture maker, an experienced instructor, and former senior editor at Popular Woodworking Magazine. He currently crafts fine furniture and teaches both in-person and online classes from his studio in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. So welcome back to the show, Chuck.
Hey, well, thank you. Welcome back. Wait, isn't this the first episode that we're recording?
You would think. So dear listeners,
I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So Chuck got the Daryl Peart treatment on our last recording session. In other words, I forgot to hit the record button, and we didn't notice till we got to the 5 questions episode. So Chuck was kind enough to come back. It's been a couple of days and record this. So thank you, Chuck, for your time.
A couple of days to think about it, and I'm still going through.
Still came back.
Yeah, still came back. Hopefully, you have different answers for our questions this time.
Oh, certainly.
No one knows. Only we know what he said the first time. It could be completely made up.
Exactly.
Sure.
Well,
it was made up last time, so why not?
Why change?
Exactly. So before we get started with Chuck, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Sutherland Wells knows that exceptional craftsmanship deserves an exceptional finish. That's why they handcraft their full line of low and VOC exempt finishes and stains using the highest quality, cold-pressed, sustainably grown tung oil. Their unique polymerization process delivers the deep penetrating, grain-enhancing, non-yellowing protection of tung oil while reducing the drying time, allowing the finish to build a beautiful, durable film. Sutherland Wells, the timeless look of traditional oil made for the modern woodworker, and use code MWA25, that's the numbers 25, for 10% off your first order.
Yes, thank you very much, Sutherland Wells. And we'll also have them on the podcast in a few weeks. So looking forward to that. But really appreciate their sponsorship. They'll be sponsoring our interview episodes for a few months. So thank you very much. And let's continue to pay the bills and thank our patrons. So who do we have to thank this week?
For sure. We like to give our big Patreon shout out to our Patreon supporters. And today we're shouting out one friend of the show, Robert Tolnai.
Wait, you know that guy?
Yeah. You know that guy?
He owes us money.
He owes us money.
Shocking.
He's paying us money. What are we talking about?
Wow.
Anyway, if you would like to join Robert and be a friend of Chuck's and support our podcast, you can go to patreon.com/MWA podcast and help us out there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rob. And let's move on to what's in the shop. So, Brian, what are you working on? Or have you made any progress?
No, actually, absolutely not. Since last time I recorded this, we've had a bunch of kids' sports stuff. We just won what's called J-Pole. It was a 2-month-long tournament. We won it yesterday.
That's awesome. I saw the picture. That is phenomenal.
Yeah. We were talking about, before the show started recording, we were talking about nasty weather. And we had a heck of a storm come blowing through. Went from sunshine to sideways driving rain in about 5 minutes. So good time.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I finally put my big boy pants on and made the wooden arch. I put up a story like, how should I do this? And I got some really good suggestions from people that follow me on Instagram. Everything from just using bendy plywood, Luan, kerfing plywood, and just a flat out laminating an arch. So I decided not to laminate it because I'd have to build a big form and everything. And the form is kind of already in the sky. So I decided to kerf a plywood arch. I had plywood sitting around, so I just used the trenching feature on my miter saw. I used the website bricklayer.com that kind of gives you tell it, it's like a mathematical calculator. So you tell it like, this is the arch that I want, this is the span, and it kind of tells you where to put the cuts. So I kind of followed that. It's an elliptical arch, so where the ellipse is really cranking over, the cuts are closer. And then, we just basically, I made two things just in case I realized they're really like a big wet noodle. Mm-hmm. So I slid a piece of scrap wood underneath it, took it upstairs. And then I told my wife and my youngest daughter, I'm like, when you guys get home from Target, we're going to put 6 hands in the air and we're going to stick this sucker in the ceiling. So we grabbed it. No, I'm happy to report I'm still married and my child doesn't disown me. So we got the arch in the sky, nailed it in. It worked beautifully. The finished side, the non-kerf side, is the side that's actually going to face the interior of the room. So that's the side that you'll see. So the kerfs that are in the sky, I think I basically left about the last layer of the plywood, so maybe a little less than 1/8 of an inch. That's a solid piece. And so the molding that comes in the front and the back kind of sandwich the arch, I think will cover everything else. So I don't think I have to bondo anything, just to bondo it where it hits the vertical molding that comes up off the floor.
Sure.
So my gripe with myself is I don't think I put the vertical blocking coming out of the ceiling close enough together. So there's some kind of little dips between where it's attached to the, I guess, studs, for lack of a better term, coming out of the ceiling. Mm-hmm. So I can deflect it a little bit with my hand. So I think I'm going to kind of push it up. And then when I put sandwich it with the front and back molding, that should hold it tight and should look fine. It's probably one of those things that I know it's there. It's not totally perfect. And as long as I don't point it out to anybody else, nobody's going to see it. Sure. So it's the typical woodworker curse, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, in this, like when you're fairing that curve in a final, like, I don't know if you're going to mud it, bondo it, whatever, to kind of really get that to be smooth and conjoined around or as it goes through, the arch, just make sure it's tight. You don't want any bulges or dips, that you can see necessarily from across the room, but little here's and there's not going to kill anybody.
Yeah. And my other gripe is I have, when my brother bought this beautiful old Victorian house. It's very close to the Yingling Mansion in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. If anybody's ever been there, it's beautiful. Architecture is gorgeous in that area, but he didn't have any tools. So I gave him a lot of my tools. I gave him most of my nailers. So I'm a Makita guy. I have so I bought a Makita.
I thought you were a Festool guy.
Oh no, I just for cordless battery powered hand. I got a budget, Kyle. I can't afford that stuff. So
my miter saw doesn't have a trenching feature.
Wow. The Capex is a nice saw.
That's it is. Yeah.
But these Makita, these battery powered Makita, it misfires every other one. And I was like, what is going on? So I can't understand how I'd possibly be misusing it. So I'm not terribly thrilled with that. So I might go back to corded, air pressure nailers. So
I mean, it's been a long time since I've been in the industry of carpentry. I've used what early 2000s tech was for battery operated pass load nailers. Mm-hmm. That's gas in there, so they're and they're finicky. I mean, they've always been finicky. I don't care what you're trying to do. If you don't have a source of traditional compressed air, the cycles that this stuff has to go through to recoil and set, just like a firearm.
Yeah,
there's detail there, and if anything is not quite right, stuff's gonna happen. It's annoying as hell, but
I mean, I have a pancake compressor.
Yeah,
I should. I mean, those are the Porter cable ones I had. God, they're probably 30 years old, and they're still built like a tank. The framing nailer I have, the seals are starting to go on it, so it leaks air just sitting there. But the other ones are solid. So if you have a suggestion for a really nice quality finished nailer and brat nailer, I'll take it.
Oh, let me look. let me look into it.
What's the company? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Grex.
Yeah, it's going the other green and black company.
The other green. I've never used Grex. I've used the old Porter cable stuff. I'm trying to actually my stuff's probably mainly Porter cable. I had an 18 gauge brad nailer. My dad's got one of the 20 pin nailers. Used with great success. They're fantastic.
Yeah, I have a Porter cable upholstery stapler that we use for theater sets occasionally.
Okay.
that has no safety whatsoever. You
just bump
you
the
pull
hell
the
out of it.
trigger, it just
Pop, 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 pop,
it
pop.
just
Oh, you can fire in air.
yeah. So I tell my wife this, right? Be careful. And it's like the Matrix in my shop. She's shooting staples past me because she doesn't realize there's no depression in this thing.
It's like, wow,
so,
this really has a hair trigger.
Yeah. All right. So I got to look up Cricks.
And you don't think it's on purpose?
Yeah, right. Maybe her aim is just bad.
It's a dangerous spot, Chuck, to be worth more dead than you are alive. So you never know, especially this is a dangerous topic.
I've been a professional woodworker my whole career. That's always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
I've never taught my wife how to use the air nailers.
Yeah. All right, Sean, how about you?
Wow, nothing as exciting as that. But I did get a new bar for my chainsaw. Extended it a couple inches. I'm up to 20 inches now on my old steel MS290. One know what I'm talking about, maybe. And just yesterday, as we're recording this, I got a chance to work the hell out of that thing. I basically found out that I can run my saw. I didn't pay attention the last time I had a big cut session over there because he had a bunch of big oak trees felled. And the company skipped town on him. And at 20 inches, there were probably maybe a dozen cuts I made that weren't complete full depth plow that I had to back up from the other side. So you learn a lot about that operation going through that. You got to basically, like I told the one guy, it's like eating an elephant. You just got to nibble. You can't. I'm walking around these things, taking cuts from either side, either way, rolling what we can to get to the backside and stuff. But I was having this issue when it was full down, and it's probably my sawing technique that's part of the problem. But I was getting saw shavings that were blown in from the top that were becoming impacted, and so the saw would like bite on it and stall almost briefly and jump and just go that, and you could hear it in the motor, and you could hear it. Yeah, I could feel it for sure. So I ended up getting my son, my oldest, who was over there helping out, got our leaf blower, and he stood on top of the log and blew air straight down, which was blowing shit all over my face. But it actually worked well to clear out pretty well. I mean, it wasn't great. I still got some little binding issues, but it was weird because it wasn't tension in the wood that was binding. It was literally the shaving that like he ended up making like an aluminum like stick to kind of like plow through there, and it was like hard to break free. It got so tight, but it's loose at the same time. There's a little oil there off the saw and just these shavings, and a couple hours of heavy chainsaw work. I was the only one that brought a saw this time, but I had the biggest saw, so it was guys with little 14 and 16 inch things.
So you intimidated all of your neighbors.
Oh, absolutely. That was, and I said it before. My son noticed the first time that mine was the only one that wasn't breaking down. I was just kept on going, and they were all going over to adjust something, put the chain back on because it jumped or otherwise.
Is he saying that size matters?
I think
No,
he is.
size does not matter. Actually, he told me yesterday as I'm struggling through some cuts, and the longer I went, and there was it was weird because some parts of the tree, even like the lower parts where you think like it's probably the healthiest, because I went through some like ant-ridden major sections that like split in half as I went through them. It was really, really kind of wild. But there was one particular log where he noticed, he's like, that doesn't smell the same. I went, yeah, there's something going on here. And I was seeing my saw cut and just produce more dust than good shavings. And I like when a chainsaw is working well and sharp, it throws shavings like a chisel hit it. Like it just little sizable, visible shavings. And in this one section, it was just dust and hard dust. Like it was just, and it fought me the whole way. And he told me, he's like, oh, you had an opportunity to buy a bigger saw. I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. Go the full Cremona, with the 4-foot bar and the 2-man. I like hold the handle on the far side thing. He actually brought up before we did this. He goes, we could use those old time saws with like the 2 guys on either side. I'm like, oh, you want a buck saw? Let's do it. I'm in.
Oh man,
those monster teeth and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would be fun. But no, but much progress was made. I still have to go over there and take out. There's a cherry tree that died a couple years ago that they dropped that I didn't. I think then I might, and apologize to all the woodworkers that want red oak or this particular cherry tree. I'm not logging this. I have no machinery to move this stuff. Like it's possible you could make lumber out of this wood. It's actually pretty darn straight. In the red. I mean, pretty big. I mean, there were sections of this tree that was like basically a few feet off the ground was its own tree, but it joined the bottom with a whole nother one that's still standing. So I mean, but I mean, had to be approaching 30 inches in diameter. I mean, these are big honking guys, and they were felled in like 20, 25-foot lengths, just laying on this guy's yard. So there's a lot to go through. But
well, you might want to do a search and see if there's a Sawyer in your area and see if they want any of this stuff.
I do know. I know
Of course,
a guy
we're talking
who
residential trees,
guy,
so they
but yeah,
may
this is
pass.
this is a backyard that a riding mower can barely get. So yeah, I mean it's tough.
Okay.
To do it properly, you're gonna have a big old crane involved.
Yeah.
Oh wait, there's a leach field in the front yard. You can't put your truck there. Like there's things, but yeah, I mean whatever. He actually is making my yard and the neighbor on the other side take bunch of this wood. And he's like, I don't know what to do with it. And he actually, the bigger stuff, like even sectioned, I'll call them cookies, but if it was 12 to 14 inches thick and 30 inches in diameter, this thing still weighs 200-300 pounds.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't know how we're moving this. Like, dude, I don't know. Put it on your little red wagon and roll it somewhere. But I might, because I have some bigger stuff, because I took a pine tree down in my front yard that's got, those are not quite that big, but I've got some pretty hefty pine logs that I might rent a splitter, because I could get a splitter of my own. I don't need a splitter of my own to have a splitter of my own. So it's kind of a mental struggle I'm going through. I don't live in the woods. I do live in a city. I'm a mile off the expressway. It's not like I'm into forestry.
You just need some sledgehammers, some wedges, and
I've got wedges and sledgehammers.
Little hatchet to get the fibers.
Yeah. It's
you're good to go.
It's a whole thing.
I'm buying the domain Wisniewski logging right now.
Oh no! Actually, that the addendum to that is my oldest. I think next year scheduled to get rope trained for his job. So he's the union, he's an insulator. But in refineries, they got towers that to work on, and so there's a whole crew that gets specially trained to basically rappel down and work, and then do all this stuff. And he's like, hey man, when I get that, I'm gonna get the spikes, and I just go up, take the saw, and I'm like,
start topping the trees.
Yeah, I mean, it's a safer way to do it, honestly. I mean, it's what the guys do anyway. I mean, the guy that started the work in my neighbors, I mean, their crew, they were doing that. The dude was, spider manning up the tree and lobbing off what he could when he could, and then eventually, does it. Had two saws, had a bigger saw and a little saw, just trim with, and then to actually fell with. It was entertaining to watch, but they were just shysters to take money and run. That's how that goes. So anyway, enough about me. Kyle, what are you working on?
Let's see. I got a new batch of jigs. So if you need the seat drilling guide or a spindle drilling guide, they'll be shipping rather quickly. It won't be the typical 2 to 3 weeks. It'll be like, a couple of days I can get those out. So please go over there and look at that. Also, I want to make a mention, if you skip through our beginning promo for the Texas Woodworking Festival, you missed our discount code, which is the same as Sutherland Wells. It's MWA25.
There you go.
That's 25, and that will get you 10% off tickets for the Texas Woodworking Festival. So go over there and check that out. The other thing today I've been doing is a shop reorg. So that's always fun. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've done that in the last year. Mm-hmm. So I'm still, we bought this new car, and yes, it was my idea. Let's try to get this thing inside so it'll last, don't want it outside, salt air, it's new. Probably in 2-3 years, I won't care anymore, but right now I do. So anyway, the biggest thing I've had to do is when I back the car out and set up for the lathe, I got to drag the lathe over, which is on wheels, and lower the lathe down and all that kind of stuff. And it's a pain in the butt. So I was looking at the wall and I go, the lathe would fit right up against this wall if I move this stuff around and this stuff around. So all afternoon today, I've been playing Tetris. So I'm not quite done yet, but I think I got a good idea of how things are going to work, which is probably fool's gold at this point. But anyway, we'll see tomorrow as I continue my Tetris activities and see if I can't get something in there. But hey, it is what it is. But yeah,
Did you do like the last time I rearranged our bedroom? Like I did it in CAD, but you could do this on paper and do little like cardboard cutouts of each piece, and then have a room that size and just kind of play with where things go.
No, of course not.
No, you're doing it manually. Okay.
I did it manually. Hey, I do a tape measure. Hey, how long is this? Would this fit here?
Would that fit here? Okay, so
Let
you
me move
have
this
a
600-pound thing over here. Nope, that didn't work.
That didn't work. Let's push it back over there.
Luckily, almost all my stuff is on some sort of mobile base or on wheels, so it's not too bad. But it's like, okay, this all can fit over here, but to get to the drill press, I don't want to have to move two things out of the way. I want to be able to just walk over there and do it. Same thing with the lathe and all that. Probably one of well, it's a good tool, but I got a disc sander and I need to make a dedicated base for it and get it off the table. I got it on to now because I could make that just a little bit smaller. But I got what is it, that rigid oscillating belt and spindle sander thing.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got one of those, and then I got this disc sander. And between those two, it's always something's got to move this way, something's got to move that way. So, and that the rigid oscillating belt and spindle sander is the only thing I don't have on wheels. So it's not that heavy, but still, it's a pain in the butt. So anyway, definitely first world shop problems right here, but. But anyway, we'll get it figured out. Maybe I'll do a shop tour once I get this all situated. We'll see. But
with or without the car.
Probably both. Hey, here's with the car in. Here's with the car out.
There you go.
Yeah, with the car out, it would be really nice because then I can move my shave horse over there and have plenty of room for that kind of work and stuff like that. So that would be nice. But it's just dragging that lathe. I've been, it's like almost every day I've had to move the car out, then drag the lathe from the back of the shop to the front of the shop. And it's just like, it's a mess. But anyway, with that, Chuck, what are you working on in your shop?
Right now, I'm getting ready for another class that starts tomorrow.
All right.
But I've been working with one person for the last couple of weeks, sporadically here on a couple of Hans Wegner inspired mid-century modern beds. They're just sort of a long rectangular headboard with two additional backer boards, and then they look like floating nightstands. I'll get you a picture to put up at this point so that we're not all imagining it.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, the original was made, it was plywood that was veneered, and all the veneers, the grain direction runs vertically on the headboard. And the guy who's been in here working on those things got some really amazing material from Irian lumber, and shockingly, he didn't want to slice it up into veneers and run the things vertically. So we're running, he's got 20-inch wide walnut boards with 3 crotches in them and things like that. So it's going to be pretty amazing when it's all done.
Wow.
So
wow, that must be well, I bet that was nice trying to match all that stuff together too, as far as lugging 20-inch wide boards around. Well, maybe we could flip this one. All right, 5 minutes later, we got that one flipped.
Exactly.
Eerily similar to what Kyle's doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I look at it and I say, at some point, all I want to make is miniatures, because at that point, the longest piece I'm going to need is about a foot, and then we're good.
Yeah,
yep. Exactly. Dollhouse furniture in your future.
There it is.
Exactly.
Well, so Chuck, why don't you? I'm sure everyone listening knows all about you, but in case they don't, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up and how you got into woodworking.
Well, I grew up outside of Philadelphia, in the suburbs.
Eagles fan?
Well, yeah.
By default.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Y'all are having a run. Y'all are having a run. Yeah.
I was just saying, are you kidding? Like, you can't live in this town and I mean, or within 100 miles of this town and be a fan of someone else. Although my brother was a huge Steelers fan forever. Well, he still is.
well, Brian's on like
to Florida.
Yeah. Brian's like on the what are you? The Steelers Booster Club or whatever you belong to?
We have season tickets to the Steelers.
Yeah.
Yeah. 5 for
You drive all the way out to Pittsburgh?
Yeah. It's
Wow.
only 4 hours.
Oh, that's not. I mean, okay, so Cleveland's 2 hours from me. Detroit's an hour from me. I mean, in the grand scheme of things out there, that's probably not that bad.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
To each their own.
I can't. I'm not real thrilled about the Aaron Rodgers thing. I'll put that out there in case anybody's listening. If this is timely to you, but
one and done.
Yeah,
One
exactly. 1 year now.
One and done.
The Eagles are happy with that.
I'm sure.
I'm sure. Yes.
So are the Ravens probably too.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I grew up outside of Philly. My parents moved out a little farther out into Chester County when I was 12, and started at a school out in the. We were almost in Amish country. In fact, there was we were right on the border of Lancaster and Chester County. So, I mean, there was Amish farms all around. There were Mennonite kids that went to the high school and all that kind of stuff. And that was sort of where I had really got my start with woodworking in elementary school. They had a club for woodworking. Skateboards were the all the rage, or starting to be all the rage at that point.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think I told you on the episode that wouldn't. It's in the ether somewhere.
I was attempting to avoid continually saying, if we would have just recorded it.
exactly. But no, when I did the same thing, because when I was a kid in junior high school, we had the skateboard shop, and they sold blanks that were already curved with a little till in there, and all you had to do is cut it out. So, of course, the junior high shop teacher wouldn't let us use the bandsaw or anything like that, so he gave me a coping saw. And the blade I know now the blade was incredibly dull, because me and about 3 other kids, we would sit there and we would go till we tired out, and we'd move like an inch, and then the other kid would take over. And I swear it took us like 2 weeks, with 30-minute classes or however long they were, to get this thing all the way cut out.
That's crazy.
But
well, for me, that was 6th grade. And once again, you were limited to, here's a file, a rasp, and a coping saw, have at it.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and said, wait a minute, skateboards are kind of expensive. I have a roller skate. I can disassemble that.
Mm-hmm.
Who needs those roller skates anymore? And I never actually got to make a skateboard. So, I mean, I ended up cutting out all kinds of things. And then by the time I made it into junior high and high school, it was on to bigger and better things. Built a lot of pieces of furniture for family and friends and stuff like that. Just had really good teachers. Beyond that, it was just continually building that interest in woodworking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you went to, what is it, the Center of for Arts and Technology? I guess that's what it's known now.
Yeah, it was the vocational technical school for the high school for all of Chester County at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Philadelphia, then Delaware County, then Chester County. So you're not terribly far from Philadelphia proper. And it's all the high schools in there would bus the kids to the vocational school half a day.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was kind of an outgrowth. I had done a bunch of stuff. When I got into high school, they had your typical industrial arts program, only for us, they have 4 different shops, drafting, woodworking, metalworking, and printing. And they divided the class up into 4, and you spent 1/4 of the year in each shop. And I went to my counselor and I was like, that's great, but that means I only get to woodwork for, this tiny little segment of time. I'd like to do more. So he poked around and got me into a bunch of classes with juniors and seniors. So I was in the shop pretty much every day of the week. I mean, who needs study hall, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mostly I slept through those anyway.
Yeah.
So, which kind of did that in shop too, but that's a different story. And what I found was I really loved it. So by the time I was in high school, that was my freshman year. So by the end of the freshman year, it was like, I want to do a lot more of this. And behind the house where I lived, was a cabinet shop, and it was a father and two sons. And one of the sons had stayed at the home high school, and the other one had gone to the vocational school. So I went and tried to talk to them. My parents were very encouraging. They drove me around to kitchen cabinet shops, big kitchen cabinet shops
Right.
in the area, where I saw guys that had been there for 30 years and they were making $4.85 an hour, and that kind of stuff. And like I said, and then we went and saw like a Pennsylvania House factory and that kind of stuff. And they were trying to let me know that this was the potential.
Right.
Like I said, they were very encouraging, just not for
you could rub two nickels together if you work hard.
That's right. Not two, just you could rub one up
one
on
something else. Yeah.
Yes. So I went and talked to the two guys that were in the cabinet shop behind me, the two brothers, and they both turned around and said, "You should go study with Werner Duer, who was the teacher at the vocational school. He was from Germany, born and raised there, went through his apprenticeship there. He apprenticed in two separate marquetry shops, something that, we have a plethora of here, right?
Right.
And, what they said was, you're going to be far more qualified to go get a starting position in a shop coming out of vocational school than if you stay at the home school. The home school had a really good program. I mean, they had seniors that were making grandfather clocks and stuff like that. Oh, wow. So it wasn't your ordinary, okay, here, make a top kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Or make a pen.
Or a skateboard for that.
Yes, or a skateboard even.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know you're known for period furniture. So is that about the time you got interested in period furniture, or was that later at your next
that was probably like 7th or 8th grade class trip to Colonial Williamsburg. It was just sort of wandered in there and just felt at home. I think on the 5 questions episode we talked a little bit about Wharton Esherick,
right?
And when I was working at Irian Furniture, not the lumber company, which is further down the line here. Not to jump around too much, but his studio was about 3 miles from Irian's main shop. Well, it was the only shop at the time. And one day he walked in and was like, "Hey, everybody, let's go on out to Wharton Esherick. I got us a tour." And we ended up, when I walked in there, the studio he made absolutely everything in the place, and built the walls and did everything. And I walked in there and it was like, it's not all my cup of tea as far as the designs of the pieces. There are a bunch that I like, but some of it not really my flavor. But I felt at home because it's just like, here's a person who totally expressed his creativity, and it surrounded him every day, all day. He was immersed in his own environment. And that was the only other time I'd felt that was when, I went to Colonial Williamsburg, and it was like, yeah, this is like, I'm just displaced in time or something. So that sparked the interest in period furniture. When I graduated from the vocational school, I went to work for one of Werner's former students. He was about 10 or 12 years older, still is. 10 or 12 years older than me. Well, you never know.
Yeah, you could have caught up,
Well, it's possible, when he's, I'm not going there.
No.
He was trying to do period furniture, but I spent a lot more time working with him doing renovations on homes and stuff like that. So I went out and looked up one of Werner's other former students who was even older than this guy. And he was just starting up with Merv Martin, who he was one of the first 2 conservators at the Winterthur Museum, and he started up a restoration company. So I went to talk to them, and they really weren't catching the fact that I was hitting them up repeatedly for a job. So they sent me to Lou Irian, down to his place where they were, he had, I don't know, 4 or 5 other people working in the shop, and they were mostly doing repair work and stuff like that. Asked me to, if I would like to come to work there, which I did, and I guess I was there just about 10 years.
And
left there.
now
Yeah.
they just do the lumber sales, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
because at the
that,
time they were like internationally known for their reproduction work and
yeah, that was later. So
yeah.
like I said, I was employee 5 or 6, I
Okay.
think. At the height, there were 29 of us.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really big custom shop. And we were selling all over. And, you know, I was there for a lot of that. I drove, you know, a lot of the design expansion.
Yeah.
You know, I pushed for more Chippendale Rococo stuff, which was really, when I first got into this, that was the stuff that caught my eye.
Yeah. Yeah. I still remember, I don't know if it was Popwood or Fine Woodworking, but I remember in the early 2000s, they did a whole big spread on the company and all their reproduction work and stuff like that. It was just amazing.
Yeah, that was Fine, had done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, prior to that, I mean, we were in early American Homes magazine, and there were like 2 or 3 non-woodworking related magazines that pushed us out there and got us, you know, got the company to blow up. Basically. Yeah. That's how we ended up at the 29 people, you know, just pounding away on stuff you know, after I got there. It wasn't just, you know, it wasn't a gradual thing. It started and it ballooned rapidly.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
So
funny how advertising works.
What's that?
Funny how advertising works, right?
Yeah, shocking. You know, you get a lot of exposure and then you get a lot of business. What happens?
Amazing.
So, yeah, when I left there, I went off on my own, and I did that for a long time. Had a bunch of employees over the years. We were making furniture for people all over the country. And at the prodding of one of my furniture clients, who was also an avid woodworker, and Glenn Huey, who I'd known for forever from doing furniture shows, they said, you really need to teach. And this was about the time that I had gotten rid of all the employees, because I was working 70, 80 hours a week and not building a thing. So to me, it was, you know, it was like, oh, why would I just got rid of all the apprentices. Why would I want to jump back into that? And they're like, oh, no. We're talking about people that aren't trying to do this for a living. And I'm going, all I've heard for the last 15 years is this is a dying art. How many of those people can be out there? So it took them over a year. I mean, the one fellow, Mark, who was the client, he was actually my first student. You know, he bought a William and Mary highboy for his wife, and he said, hey, you know, one thing is not tied to the other, but I'm building a secretary desk for my daughter for a wedding present, and I'm having trouble making the tombstone raised panel doors for the bookcase and doing all the cubby holes and stuff for the interior. You think you could help me? I like, Mark, you know, it's a 2-year wait for your piece of furniture. You know, I mean, what's your deadline on this secretary? He said, oh, that's not a problem. The wedding was 5 years ago.
It's the best.
And I went,
that's awesome.
Typical avocational woodworker. So I helped him, and then I helped him with a couple of other pieces, and you know, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I really enjoyed his company, as well as you know, being a client. I mean, it was great having him in there, and I went over and worked at his shop with him a few times, and it was just, you know, I enjoyed that aspect of it. And at some point, after having gotten rid of all the employees, it was like, you know, that's the only thing that I didn't miss, collecting and paying the taxes and doing all the paperwork that are involved with employees. You know, my dog has the sniffles, I can't come in today, kind of stuff. You know, all the HR stuff was just like, why bother? But I did miss the teaching aspect of it. So that was when I started the Acanthus workshop, was to sort of supplement, and then with the intention to slowly transition out of pretty much custom making stuff, because I wasn't getting any younger, and hauling highboys and big secretaries around by myself eventually wouldn't be an option. So I'd have to go to those miniature things. I'm not sure there's a huge market for that out there yet.
I don't know. You might be surprised. Who knows? But anyway, I know I remember when I first got into Windsor chairs, my mom was going, "What is a Windsor chair?" And I went over to her mantle, and she had a little miniature Windsor chair. I go, "It's one of these."
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what is a highboy? Here.
Here, there you go.
Right.
quarter scale highboy.
Yeah,
Quarter
there you
scale.
go.
Yeah.
Or 10th scale, whatever.
But well, that
Anyway.
now you mentioned you started the Canada's workshop to do the teaching and stuff, but you also run something called No BS Woodworking. So
Yeah, so that was an outgrowth of once I had started the school teaching, week long and weekend classes. Glenn Huey, who was at Pop Wood at the time,
Yep.
asked me to start writing there.
Mm-hmm.
And that naturally led to Woodworking in America conference, saying, "Hey, would you come out and be a presenter?"
Yep. And that's the first time we met at a White Castle in Cincinnati.
Oh, I remember it.
I know, well, it was in Covington actually, but yeah.
Yes. Well, we always called it Cincinnati. They just weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in a whole
You can
different
walk
state.
there.
But
I don't care how wide that river is. It's still the same.
yeah. Well, hey, the Cincinnati airport is in Kentucky. So
Yep.
Yeah.
One benefits from the other. Let's just all call it the same.
yes,
Fine.
nobody ever heard of Covington, Kentucky, but
No.
Yep.
yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I seem to remember Diami and Tom Iavino accompanying all of us. We walked all down from Covington past the IRS building, going and made it through the hood to the White
Castle.
I'd have to look on the Wayback Machine, but I might have a picture of this event. It is possible.
Yeah.
If I
How
don't,
much will-
Diami does.
How much will it cost not to have that picture bubble? Patreon, here I come.
Yes.
Million.
So in the process of doing Woodworking in America, that I met Tommy McDonald there, and we became really good friends. So I got invited to do a couple of his episodes in, I think it was season 2 of Rough Cut Woodworking.
Mm-hmm.
And what I liked was the aspect of being able to put together all the educational stuff for an entire project and put it down on video. I just really liked that idea. So I, not really having any kind of clue what I was doing, I went and bought a couple of camcorders and started this thing called No BS Woodworking to put it out as a subscription thing, and did that for a couple of years, and that I've never really let go of it. I mean, I've always done some stuff with it, but I haven't, like now it's all through YouTube, so it's not a subscription thing yet.
Yep. Well, you're doing the Tuesday tips, right?
Yeah. Tuesday tips, which is tons of fun. Every Tuesday night at 8:00.
Yeah.
I just the plan was to kind of keep it, so it's kind of an outgrowth of the 360 with 360 so I went to work for the magazine.
Yep.
About 2 years or so. No, it was more than that, because I started writing for the magazine in 2008. It was 4 or 5 years later that they offered me a job as senior editor. So, and we had a little bit of a family emergency thing at that point, which sort of made me kind of reevaluate my life. And when they made the offer, it was like, okay, this was a chance for me to slow my life down a little bit. So my wife
have a
and I
regular
packed up
9 to 5 type job.
Yeah, a totally different kind of a thing. Yeah. So, we went out there, still did some video for the magazine, did, lots of tool reviews. What I really hated the most was sitting in a cubicle, tapping away on a keyboard. So at some point there it was late 2014, me and Glenn Huey and Bob Lang all left together, and we started 360 Woodworking, which was totally online. So it was written articles with video support and video with written support.
I remember that. Yeah.
And we did a podcast called 360 with 360. The idea was everybody else was doing I hate to say this because I'm sitting in an hour and a half long podcast at the moment. Everybody was doing that.
Yeah.
So we decided we were going to do 6 minutes with 360 woodworking, which always ended up being more like 15 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Tuesday Tips is sort of an outgrowth of that indirectly, because I wanted to do sort of short hits on Tuesday nights where it's a single topic. I can go in, I can do it live, I can answer questions, and to date, they all end up around an hour.
Yeah.
Because it's like, people ask questions, and the next thing you know, we're off in 3 different directions, and it's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing that I guess I disliked about working at the magazine and then doing 360 was there wasn't a massive amount of direct interaction with the viewers or the audience, as it were. So I didn't get the feedback that I needed. I don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I know what I don't know, but that doesn't help you.
Right.
But being able to have that direct feedback was the thing that I really liked about teaching. So to assuage that a little bit, Glenn agreed to let us do some classes at the 360 woodworking shop. It was a partnership. We were give and take on a lot of things. Because I think he really didn't he was a miserable bear the week leading up to every single class. So as soon as the class started, he would go. It's the apprehension of it all, but once it started, he was in his groove, and everybody was happy, and that was all that mattered. But it was the anxiety of leading up to it that killed him. And then it was doing those things that really sort of made me realize that that's really I'm not really built for isolated content creation. Mm-hmm. So no matter what I do, I mean, I have a handful of classes planned out that I hopefully will be able to get filmed and then put those up, not as a subscription per se, but you'll be able to buy the project and technique classes on the website and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I also want to make it in some way. I have the program that I'm using to put it on the website allows for some textual interaction, not so much like what we're doing right now. But
right.
Although I have done some of this, I mean, I've done, I ran some classes, some virtual classes through Zoom, which to me is awesome because I can get people in who either can't or won't travel to come here. Mm-hmm. And it's the next best thing to a hands-on class because I made everybody log in with 2 different devices so that we could have a wide shot and a close-up shot. And
right.
I can see what you're doing and help you correct techniques and fix the problems, that kind of stuff. So it was just a ton of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that is probably going to get more and more popular as we go along. Is just because people sometimes don't have the time or resources to travel,
right.
across the country. And, we're fortunate here in Texas finally to have, a few woodworking school type outlets. But, 5-6 years ago, there was nothing. You had to travel all the way to the East Coast every time you want to take a class.
Right.
And that's a
which
barrier.
in the end, I mean, it's doubling or more of the cost of the class. So, and that's the other thing is, for me, if you're running large classes, it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that some of these people have a significant investment of time, money, and effort in it. Because so that's, when I moved back to Pennsylvania and started up the school again, my classes are 2, 3, once in a while we'll have 4. So it's semi-private lessons, really more so than, I used to run 6, 8, 10 people in a class at my old place before I went to work for the magazine. So, it's a completely different deal, and it allows the students to get a lot more interaction with me.
Right.
Whether that's a good thing or not, you'd have to ask them. But most of the people that come through here really do appreciate the fact that they can customize things a little bit. If they screw something up, we can fix it on the fly. It's not okay, well, you're going to have to take that part home and see if you can't duplicate it at home because we're moving on to the next thing. We've got 10 other people in the class and
Right.
we can't be holding everyone up for you.
Yeah. Either that or you got to have a whole inventory of parts just ready. Oh, and here's a replacement part.
Right. No, and that's,
Here's this mistake. I got that covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really do that either. That's a pretty good way to go broke fast doing your classes.
I can imagine. Yeah. Or at least, yeah, because you got to bake that in the price of your class. Yeah. So
and you're investing time and materials into creating things that may or may not ever get used.
Yeah.
So, and you also have to have storage for that kind of stuff because, okay, well, I didn't need it this class. I'll throw it away. And then 9 months later, you decide to run that class again. And now I got to make it again.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So, so at that point, at this point, primarily what I'm doing is teaching the classes here at my place. And I teach fairly regularly up at Connecticut Valley School of Woodworking. I'm doing an awful lot of presentations and things for woodworking clubs all around, guilds, those kinds of things.
What classes do you have in the portfolio upcoming, so to speak?
Well, we're doing a Nakashima-inspired cantilevered chair. Next month. We also have a miniature chest of drawers, which is we're actually going to take and it may vary by student in the class, but the plan is to take a pretty decently proportioned Queen Anne chest, so early 18th century, and then scale it down to a 1/3 model. And see, I'm working my way towards those miniatures.
Wow.
Yeah. Benjamin Button.
We're trying. So it's just, it's kind of like we just did a spice box, a Chester County spice box in here. And I had 4 people for the class because don't really need more than a bench top's worth of space to build one of those. They're kind of small. The really cool thing is, the miniature chest is very similar, except it has far fewer drawers. And, it's just the act of taking a full-size chest and scaling it down and then adding whatever details you want sort of makes that appealing to.
Now, can you
I
still
hope it
put
does.
secret compartments into this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of
You
course.
can put secret compartments in anything.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Anything, Chuck?
Anything.
All right.
Absolutely anything.
Absolutely.
And, if you haven't aired the 5 questions yet, when we get to that, there is a story in.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you've already aired it, they've already heard it.
No. It'll come out in succession.
In sequential order. You're not going to do it in reverse order.
Well, our patrons will get it in reverse order, but yes.
Yeah, but clearly they're not very bright. They give you guys money.
That's how you get on the show, Chuck. I don't know how you got there.
You can edit that out or not.
No, of course not. Of course not. Oh.
So I think that pretty much covers who I am, where I came from.
Yeah,
and where
exactly.
I don't know. This whole thing has gone way, way off the rails.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're good at. As I told you, Rex Hansen sent in a bunch of questions for you, so I think we got a few of those in already. But one thing I know, one thing I did know that I want to ask is, how did you get into the teaching the Esherick and type stuff? From period furniture and all that kind of stuff. What led you into teaching the more sculptural pieces, I guess?
Well, again, that was kind of an outgrowth of that trip that I took when I worked at Miriam to Esherick Studio. Walking around there, like I said, it felt like home. There were, 10, 12 pieces that I saw that were, and there's still 1 or 2 that I want to make, that really intrigued me. How do they do that? Why, why did that? How? And it's like, it's a total departure. But those things kind of went on the the back burner for me until I started teaching. And when it's like, okay, I'm going to teach classes, this is going to be kind of cool. I can do projects that I've always wanted to do, or that I've done that I want to do again. And I don't have it's a different kind of motivation than when you're building something for someone. So I got to play a lot more doing the teaching than I did during the time. I mean, I always had a fair amount of leeway building the pieces for clients. But it was this gave me total freedom to play. All I had to do was find, a few other knuckleheads who were willing to do the same thing that I wanted to do. So, so fortunately I found a handful of people that were intrigued by the Wharton Eschrick pieces that intrigued me. And that sort of grew into a couple of them saying, hey, would you ever consider doing a Maloof chair? I've always wanted to make a hornback chair. So we sat down and I was at Yale at the furniture study with Bob Van Dyke, looking at something for one of the classes I was teaching up there. And they had just gotten in a Maloof rocker, which didn't look a whole lot. I mean, it's essentially a hornback chair with rockers.
Yeah.
Very similar. The crest rail construction is a little different, but a fair amount of it's significantly the same. So naturally, I took all the patterns and dimensions off of it, and then came back and adapted that into the hornback chair with glass. So it was, that kind of stuff. Hey, this will be a lot of fun, and that grew into, could you do a Nakashima inspired chair? Could we do? I mean, I've got a Nakashima table that's dining inspired dining table that's coming up. So sometime later this month, the class is hopefully going to meet at a lumber yard. We're going to try and dig through slabs, find these guys slabs for their dining tables, and then we're going to come back and build a base that each one of them sort of, I don't know if they'll all be the same or if the three will have three different bases or whatever, but they'll all be sort of inspired by that George Nakashima aesthetic, which is kind of cool. So like I said, it's all, if they suggest something that I really don't want to do, then I probably won't. But like I had last year, I had somebody that said, hey, Mark Spagnolo did this jewelry box with the sides are these little doors that open up so you can hang necklaces and stuff in there. Would you ever consider doing that as a class? And I'm like, well, not without talking to Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, because I mean, he's got that content on his site and he's selling it, so, so I texted Mark and said, hey, would you mind? And he said, no, go ahead, knock yourself out. And then about 10 minutes later, he said, I was talking to Nicole, and I'm thinking, okay, well, there's where the other shoe dropped.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you want to advertise it, let us know. We'll throw it in the rotation on the Friday show.
Oh, cool.
You're doing this. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to run it 27 times in the next 6 months, So it was kind of cool. We did it. I had 2 people. They ended up making 5 jewelry boxes.
Wow.
Yeah. The one guy was, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And I adapted a whole lot of it to the Shaper Origin so that they could crank out enough, 5 boxes worth all in 1 week.
Yeah.
So it was a ton of fun. And like I said, if it wasn't something that I liked the piece and it was like, okay, how can we make this our own? And so we did some design modification, some joinery modification, and cranked it out. It was just a ton of fun. So I would consider running it again, just not 2 or 3 dozen times.
Right. Well, one of the things that in your catalog of upcoming classes that really got my mind going was this Eschrick library steps. That looks like a fascinating piece.
Yeah.
And you sure you can do that in 5 days?
I'm not sure we could do that in 50 days. No, I ran it before at the 360 shop out in Cincinnati. And honestly, it is probably the most challenging project I've ever made, and certainly the most challenging I've ever taught. The central column on that thing has this twisted carving
Yeah.
And then the legs, the treads on this thing are set in with through mortise and tenon joinery, specifically spaced around the twist, and then the risers are dovetailed in. But Esherick didn't make things easy. He didn't do the joinery. He had a whole shop full of guys that were doing that stuff. But they did curved dovetails on this thing. They're not even like, it's not, okay, we're gonna sculpt this thing into this twisting, turning shape. That's hard enough. Let's add in curved dovetails to the whole process.
Wow.
And then you've got these curved stretchers that go from riser to riser that are set in, and these guys had to have had a lot of boat building experience, because there's nothing straight, flat, or square anywhere on this thing, yet everything kind of goes together. So it's fun. I'm looking forward to this class because it'll be for me, it's the second round of doing it. And I learned a ton making my own and then teaching it the first time. So by this time, they'll get through the bulk of it within the week. They shouldn't have a ton of work to do at home once they're done, except for maybe finishing the sculpting of the spiral of the column. So hopefully,
yeah, that's a lovely piece.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, sometimes they come in and they just get after it, and other times they come in and somehow they just slowly fade away. It's more about the social aspect of it.
Yeah,
it can be that way. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting piece. It definitely is. I'm inspired just looking at the pictures. I can't. I can imagine all the construction work that goes into that. Holy crap. Sculpting and all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Yep.
Anyway, so tell us a little bit about some of the furniture styles that have influenced your work over the years. We know,
like I said,
17th, 18th century type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so when I first started, I was drawn to the Rococo Chippendale stuff because, when you look at it, think about it. If woodworking's all problem solving, really, to me anyway. And when I looked at that heavily carved Rococo stuff, the problem to me was, how can you make something that looks very light, is still super strong, going to last hundreds of years, and have all that ornamentation on it? It was the ultimate kind of a challenge to me. Once I got into it and started working at Irian, I had met a bunch of antique dealers, collectors, and I was frequenting just about every museum on the East Coast that would allow me in the building. So I made a lot of friends with curatorial staff and things like that. And at the end of the day, it was one particular collector who collected late 18th, late 17th, early 18th century furniture, William and Mary stuff for the most part, some Pilgrim stuff, which is earlier. He had a house full of it. And the interior of the house, the curators, the people that were going through the curatorial program at University of Delaware, studying at Winter Tour, all called his house the mini Winter Tour. He had 18th century. You walked into, the bedroom, and it was all 18th century wainscoting and hardware and everything. It was fully decorated. It was pretty crazy. And like I said, he was into that stuff. And through him, I met a guy who at the time was the curator at Winter Tour, who was into everything except 18th century Chippendale Rococo. Everybody gravitates to that crap. And this is where it all came from.
Yeah.
And so it was like, the more literally, I remember working at Irian, I stopped by this guy's, the collector's house. The curator would show up. We'd be there till 2 or 3 in the morning because we're tearing pieces apart, flipping them upside down, seeing how they're constructed, looking at tool marks. And there are wood geeks too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and that kind of stuff. So, and then it's like, hey guys, I got to be up and at work in 4 hours. Can I go home? That kind of stuff. So, eventually I gravitated more towards that earlier stuff. And that's, if you wander into the house right now, that's I'd say probably 40% of everything I own that I've made is in that earlier period. Yeah.
Yeah, the William and Mary type stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, so what are some of your favorite projects that you've made throughout the year?
Oh, I think I mentioned, but it's hard to remember whether it was part of the 5 questions or this one. Probably my most favorite was I had done there's 2 stories related to this single piece. I copied for a client the only known 18th century spice box that looks like a miniature Philadelphia highboy. This thing was only 3 feet tall. It had little cabriole legs with bongcloth feet and acanthus on the knees, and gooseneck moldings and a cartouche with flame finials on either side, and all this carving all over the scroll board. And I made this for a client, and then at the time I was advertising in a lot of the trade journals for like Maine Antiques Digest, the Newtown Bee. These are all things for the antique world.
Right.
And I had a picture of that spice box in there advertising my services for restoration work as well as reproduction work. And my phone rang one day, and this guy says, "My name is Stan Sachs." He said, "Nice to hear from you, Stan. What can I do for you?" He said, "How come you have my spice box in your ad?" I said, "What do you mean your spice box?" "I own the one and only one of those." And I said, "Well, if you look closely, Stan, the wood in mine's a lot better than yours." So that started a pretty good friendship with Stan Sachs, who was the collector who owned that. So which was kind of cool. So that was the first one. And then later on, I had a client who I had ended up building this massive dining room set of furniture for. I mean, it was a Bombay chest. There was a secretary. There was a sideboard. There was a dining table that was 5 feet wide and 14 feet long with 6 feet of leaves that you could add to it. And then there were, I think it was 14 or it must have been 16 chairs to go around that thing, plus lots of other pieces and everything that he wanted. He was the dream client for somebody that likes the Rococo stuff, because no matter how much carving I drew on the drawings to show him, there's a flat spot right there. You think you could add some more carving? So it was awesome. So we get to the end of that project. I don't know, it was 4 or 5 years of working on his dining room, sporadically, not straight. And he said, "I'd really like to do something for my wife special." So I was showing him that Philadelphia spice box, and he's like, "Perfect, but it needs more carving here, a little more carving there." So I was doing it, and he stopped by during the construction just to see what was going on. And I had all the hidden compartments. I was finishing them off, and he's like, "What's going on here?" And I said, "Well, if you pull on that divider, there's 2 secret compartments that are attached. There are secret compartments in this thing." I said, "But of course." So I showed him the different compartments that I was putting in. There's 3 or 4 in there. And he said, "Whatever you do, don't tell my wife how to get at them." And I got the piece fit. He said, "You're allowed to tell her they're there. You're just not allowed to tell her where and how to open them."
Mm-hmm.
So I dropped it off, take the thing in, set it up. And she's like, "Secret compartments." It took her 2.5 to 3 weeks. And then I got a phone call going, "I think I found them all."
Got him.
And I'm not allowed to confirm or deny.
Yes.
So,
What if Esther? Did you get all those?
I think she got them all, but it's been a lot of years since then at this point. So I don't really remember whether there could be one that was pretty well hidden that she maybe didn't ever find.
That's awesome.
So does every piece of furniture in your house have a secret compartment?
No, in fact, I'm trying to think of any. I have a William & Mary slant front desk that I copied from that one collector's collection. It was a Philadelphia piece, and it kind of has a secret compartment in it. But if you know 17th century furniture, it's not that much of a secret.
Secret, yeah.
All right.
So, but and if I had other secret compartments, I probably wouldn't tell you.
Well, I figured you wouldn't, but I
As you
figured I would
should not.
ask, you know.
No, do not publicize
Right.
what you discovered.
Right. Because we know woodworkers, they'll just break in. They won't actually steal anything. They'll just look for the secret compartments.
That's
Yep,
right.
yep.
That's right.
Just tear it down from the seams. Just go, where is it? Where is it?
I'll come home, everything will be open and all over the floor, and I won't have any clue what they did or what
The-
they didn't do.
Nothing was taken.
That's right. I don't know, officers. They didn't touch anything. Well, they did, but they didn't take anything.
Take anything, yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, so that to me is that's the fun stuff. Those are the projects that I kind of enjoyed the most, where the things where you've got quirky kind of stories that go with them, and they're just fun projects to do all around. So yeah.
Cool. Well, that makes sense. Well, before we let you go, we always like to ask our guests, so what do you do besides woodworking? Do you have any other hobbies or pursuits?
Yeah. So I kind of got into sailing quite a few years back. Before we moved to Cincinnati, I had a sailboat that we kept out on the Chesapeake Bay, and we would try and get there at least 2, 3, 4 times a season, depending on how busy life was. But I got out of it when we moved to Cincinnati. But now where I live, I'm in a community. We have 160-acre lake, so I have a really small, just a day sailor.
Yeah.
So at least now I can look at the sailboat in the driveway and say, 2 blocks that way is water. I wish I could get it. No. So I like to sail. It's always it's lots of fun. It's very relaxing. And a bunch of the guys who live in the neighborhood here I am by far the youngest, like by 15 years, the youngest person in this group. They're all retired. So on Tuesday mornings, they meet and bowl for a few games every Tuesday. And I guess weeks that I am not otherwise engaged with teaching here, there, or somewhere else, I go and bowl for a little bit. So this week, not so much, because like I said, I have a class that starts tomorrow, but it's loads of fun. And it's again, very relaxing. It's not something that's woodworking related. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but there's always that, for me, it became that insatiable passion, and like the thing that sort of really told me that I was like, I could go right on the methadone treatment there for woodworking. When my son was like in 4th grade or 5th grade, something like that, he was sitting in class and the teacher said, okay, who's been to the Philadelphia Art Museum? Who's been to Colonial Williamsburg? Who's been to? And then I think once he hit like 8 or 9 museums where he was raising his hand, she started going for the really obscure music, like who's been to Plymouth Plantation, who's been to the Peabody Essex Museum, and he just keeps his hand up, and it's like, I mean, when my son was 9 years old, we were down in the bowels of the storage area at Colonial Williamsburg with a curator digging a piece of furniture out of the back of the storage room. And he's just going, can we go get ice cream after this?
Are we good?
Of course. Now,
So,
does he do any woodworking?
No, not he does some house renovations at this point. But he has expressed on multiple occasions, boy, I wish I would have spent more time with you in the shop. I'd know a lot more.
Yeah.
He went to work for Woodpeckers he was there for 7 years. And one of the cool things is they have a full shop. Rich, the owner, is an avid woodworker, and they set up a full shop so that they could use their products. And he would bring in guest teachers that run classes in there for the employees. So, my son took a couple of the classes, weekend classes. He made some cutting boards and some other things that, that I would have never had time to teach him how to do. I was in the shop cranking out furniture for a living. It's not like you have time to sit down and teach a 10-year-old.
Cool. Well,
So,
I
I wish he did,
Yeah.
and hopefully in the coming years
he
we'll
will.
do
Yeah.
more.
Well, I guess the ultimate question is there a Cantus Workshop bowling shirt?
I'd never really thought of that. I have polos.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's about it.
let's all get one. Come on now.
Yeah,
Modern times, we can do this.
I'll work on it. I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can get those up on the website for sale.
What is it? The
You know,
old joke is we're a drinking team with a bowling problem. So
Yeah.
yeah, be, we're
we're
a
a woodworking team with a bowling with a drinking.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. It's too convoluted at that point.
Well, with that, let's move on to our fortnightly beer choices.
Hell yeah.
So, anyway, I'll start us off. I am drinking, actually, I'm going back to the 90s. My wife picked up the Shock Top Belgian White Ale.
Oh, some shock top.
Yeah, it's been at least a decade since I've had this, and she likes the wheat stuff. I'm not a big. I like it okay. I'm just
It's
not as
good.
big.
It's good.
not
Bell's
bad.
Oberon is like a better
Yeah.
version of it with a little citrus and wheat.
Mm-hmm.
There's a local brewery here that does something called Sunshine Sky, which is another riff on the same kind of thing. But man, Shock Top, I remember the commercials. I can see
Yep.
them. That's wild.
Yeah.
They still sell it.
Yeah.
There you go. In bottles.
Who's question is who owns it now? Because it was probably bought up by Anheuser.
Probably
In
let
Bev
me-
or somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, well, InBev at least.
InBev. I don't know. It says it's. I'm looking
In
here.
Colorado by.
It says it's still made in Portland, Oregon.
No, oh, maybe they held strong.
I don't know. Well, they could have still got bought out. They just kept their.
Yeah, I
Brewery
just got the
going,
name.
so-
Yeah, for sure.
Who knows?
For sure.
Anyway.
A good throwback.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Brian, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a beer called National Broccoli Day. It's from Other Half Brewing out of Brooklyn.
Oh, it's got to be good then.
Yeah, it's
From other half. Yeah.
it's double dry hopped. It's super hoppy. I have to get this is one of the more hoppier beers.
Does
I've
it
had.
give you gas? It references broccoli. Like, what are we doing here?
I don't know, but you know what I'm counting this as a serving of vegetables is what I'm doing.
Yeah,
There
I
it is.
would.
There it
Yeah.
is. You're drinking your greens. Well,
Yeah,
done.
on the can art, there's a portrait of it looks like a senator, but his head is a piece of broccoli.
Oh,
Sounds
it's I
great.
guess it's a broccoli haircut type stuff. That's
Yeah, I
popular
don't
with the kiddos.
If you could see that or not.
That is the head
Yeah.
of broccoli. Yeah.
So, yeah, Chuck, they have this in your area probably. Other Half makes good stuff. If you ever need, I like it a lot. Sean, how about you?
So I picked up this the other day. Some Dogfish Head Citrus Squall. I'm a big Sea Quench fan.
Mm-hmm.
Little citrusy. This is less citrusy, more little fruit in there, but it's their Imperial Golden. But it's very nice. Very nice. Chuck, how about you, buddy?
Mine comes in this nice.
Well, they misspelled bro.
I didn't spell it. That's Coca-Cola.
As my
I'm
14-year-old say it's bruh.
Bruh.
Yeah, well,
Bruh.
I am drinking Coke Zero, but at least it's in a Moreline lager glass. So
There you go.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
if you remember, Moreline
Yes.
was right there in Cincinnati.
Oh yeah.
Not far- you would just walk across the Blue Bridge from Covington.
Well, and then
Yeah.
through the Cincinnati, the bit of the ghetto on the way. But yeah, actually I was just perusing pictures of when we were there. Yeah. And we went to the Christian Moreland Brewery, and that awesome, like reconfigured industrial space that is a
Oh, yeah.
brewery again.
yeah. Well, that's all down there by the Great American Ballpark, which is a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
cool
It's all
area.
within blocks. Somebody told me there's like 15 original breweries in the Cincinnati area. It was like a massive hub at the time. I mean, some years ago. And that we had that thing that evening. I have a picture of Matt Cremona with a pretzel talking on it like a phone. You know? like 12 years ago.
I was saying that could be today.
It could be. It
Could
could
be.
be. He's kind of young. But yeah, no, like Christian Moreland. Yeah, very, very awesome.
Yeah. So, and I tried to stick with the theme. I knew you were going to go for the beer thing, so
Yeah.
at least I'm drinking my
It's okay.
Coke Zero out of something that kind of relates.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate that. And speaking of appreciation, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Well, the easiest way to do that is go to my website, acanthus.com. You'll have a link somewhere in those show notes, I'm sure.
Yep.
If you do the Google thing for Chuck Bender Woodworking, you'll be able to find my YouTube channel. Probably my Instagram is at No BS Woodworking. And I think I seem to remember, I can't remember which episode it was we recorded or didn't record. Right, there's underscores between no and BS and BS and woodworking, because otherwise it's Knobs Woodworking.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Knobs Woodworking. Okay, got to register that one, Brian.
Yeah.
But you know, like I said, if you search on my name with woodworking attached, you'll find me somewhere.
All right. Well, great. Well, let's move on to feedback. So, Brian, take us away.
Okay, so regarding episode 558 with Andy Minier, really super talented guy, has some really great insights. So be sure to go back and listen to that if you have not already. But we have some feedback here. First one is from Joe Robert Bass. It says, "Let's go, Andy," with a hand raised emoji. The next one is from Shinobi Tree, who gives us 3 fire emojis. And then we have Gumtree Hill Woodwork. It says, "Absolute legend, gentleman, and master craftsman." And then we have Christine 503. It says, "Looking forward to this one." And then our final one is from Catherine Brabbit. It just says, "So cool," with a couple of exclamation points. So if you would like to leave us some feedback, we appreciate it. It helps us develop the show. You can leave it on your any of our Instagrams. The MWA podcast Instagram is probably the best place. And if you lose an iTunes or Spotify thing and you can leave us a rating there, we would appreciate it. It helps get the show in front of other people.
And that just about wraps it up for this show. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on the podcatcher of your choice. Just search for the Modern Woodworkers Association. And while you're there, please leave us a review. You can follow us on Instagram at MWA_podcast. And if you'd like to support the podcast, go over to patreon.com/MWA podcast. But the best thing you can do is tell a friend. Word of mouth goes a long way in sharing our discussion.